knows? Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Keep my head up when I act, head up, that's a fact. Never looking back, I'ma keep myself on track. Keep my head up, staying strong, always moving on. Feel I don't belong, tell my thoughts to move along. Push myself to be the best, die with no regrets. Live with every breath, see my message start to spread. And I had so many dreams, then you hit your teens. Life ain't really what it seems, try to find out what it means. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. I'm grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to I don't want no fake love, I want the real stuff. Everybody listen up, cause I'll only say it once. I'm gonna show you all the path, if you want it bad. I'm gonna show you where it's at, yeah, how you can get it back. Yeah, cause I ain't never done, I'll be number one. Working hella hard until I get just what I want, yeah. Rises like the sun, yeah, fatal like a gun. Shooters gonna shoot and I'm gonna shoot until I won, yeah. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. I'm grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win, yeah.
All right, what's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in, hanging out. I'm super excited because for the first time ever, I've been doing live streams for like 3 years now. I got my best friend to show up because we need to talk about Stranger Things season 5. And I had homework. My homework was I needed to watch at least the first 2 episodes of season 5. So, of course, I binged it. And I was like, I really love Efraim's take. Him being my best friend, he looks at a lot of different perspectives. And as soon as you started talking last time about Stranger Things season 5, I was like, oh shit. Like, yeah, some of these points make really good sense. So let's just dive into it, dude.
I'm excited you did your homework. I really appreciate that.
One of the first times I actually do homework.
Oh my goodness. I just want to say that like my point of view is obviously going to be different than a lot of people's because uh TJ was like, "Hey, you should really watch this show." And he gives me these recommendations and I'm like, "Yo, maybe." And I'll put things off and then I'll just like binge an entire series on a sad boy weekend. And I want to say that's what kind of happened with Stranger Things. It was like, oh, I'm putting this off for a couple years. I know it's coming to the end, so I get to watch the entire series in like 2 weeks, which takes a lot of like the emotional component of like I've watched these kids grow up. I'm like, no, I'm just watching the show, and I get to see like all the things compressed in like one way. And I can honestly say, um, I enjoyed the show, but I don't think I enjoyed the show the same way everyone else did. Uh, I love season 5 because season 5 had
a very 80s point of view of like wrapping it up. And I guess let's just start with that. Like it was just very 80s and how it all ended, on how all the characters kind of wrapped up, on how all the characters came together. And it was, I don't think most people are used to like not getting their quote unquote happy ending where everything is perfect and everything's in a pretty bow. Um I think the season captured the flaws we make when we allow the fans to like change the direction of the characters, but also it added a level of like realism that I don't think people wanted because they just had so much invested in it. I think they wanted like big like magic endings, like overpowered beings, and like everyone to fall in love with all the right people. And that's just not true. That's not life.
Yeah, dude, that's and so you brought up a really good point that I hadn't really thought about before. And then as I was watching season 5 and as I was thinking about things from a writing perspective, it completely made sense. And that was season 1, 11 is not supposed to be the main character. It
Right.
is not really a big supposed to be a big character, but these guys wrote one season and then it explodes. And now it's like, oh crap, we really need to take a right turn. And it's really about, Mike, at least from what you kind of assessed.
Yeah, like for me, I feel like it really was like about the boys and their journey and their coming of like the coming of age story. But I think like 11 just kind of added an aspect of it, or like, like the crush, the superhuman abilities, like the unknown, and like one of the boys find the first love, and like, and I think if any guy who has like a group of friends is always like the first one who gets like the first kiss, well, the first like boob grab, whatever, whatever milestone we talk about as boys, we'll keep it PG. But and I think something happened where like a lot of people really love this character, and I think that's really what morphed and changed the dynamic, because you kind of lose like that D&D feel. You kind of lose like the specialization of the characters and their bonds and what they brought to that, because we really have to highlight like 11, who was in some aspect like a superhuman being, which feels very much like an NPC, which is now made the main focus, right? Like she gets to come in and she gotta like adds like this dynamic, and they're like battling through these things because they're all very, they're vulnerable beings. And she adds like that extra layer of boost and extra control. But then like to kind of focus on her and have her really be like the story, like the boys kind of became like background characters, and we lose a little bit of like that dynamic of like growth and development for them, and we kind of lose like what's supposed to be like their friendship going through these supernatural beings, because we're like, oh, we're focused on 11. Well, everything needs to focus on 11, and we lose just the boys in that aspect, so we don't really watch them develop in the same way that we could have if she hadn't been the focus.
That's interesting. And it makes sense from a writing perspective of, okay, here's this story. And then the fans take off like, well, what are you going to do? You want to give fans what they want. You want to keep this momentum going and this momentum building. But then, like you said, you are now putting who were originally your main cast of characters in the background. And so you may not be focusing on some things. I do think I think they did a little bit pretty good of that with like Lucas's character. They touched on some things, um, but they definitely didn't get a very huge spotlight as 11 did.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that like the first season is like probably the last season where we get to watch all the boys develop in the way, and you get to focus on all the boys, and I think from that point on, each season, each boy kind of takes a backdrop to something else, right? Because we really need to focus in on how are we developing 11? How are we developing like this background world, the supernatural? And we, instead of it being like mysterious and demystifying, we just kind of focus in on that aspect of it. And I think the framing gets a little weird, right? Because she gets too big for the story, or she gets to a point where like you can't include them in this because none of them have that like mystical tie. They're all humans who are delving to the realm of like supernatural, where she's supernatural, delving deeper into supernatural, right? So now she's looking more of like, what are my powers and what are my origins and like how do I do these things and how to become better? When in reality for them, they're just like, what is happening here? Like, what are these demons and why are they kidnapping us, right? So like, it's hard to kind of keep everyone in that the same framing of the story without like minimizing one aspect of it. And 11, I feel like what makes 11 unique, and it does really have like that 80s feel because I think we did see a lot of female leads like develop in the 80s where like it would have been like a masculine role. I think of like, is it like Sigourney Weaver when she's like an alien, right? There's a role's made for like a man, but then she has this like persona and she has this presence where she is a woman, but she has this very masculine presence and she takes the lead. And I feel like 11 in some aspects got to like be that for like a new group of people. And I think that's why it resonates so well. And that's why you can like go in that direction. But I don't know if that was the original intent.
Yeah. And it's there. Okay. So let's, I guess we've kind of talked about some of the things that we really set up in our private last conversation. So my best friend and I, we always normally have a weekend chat where it could go from anywhere from 30 minutes to 3.5 hours, where it's always like, this is what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So those are
Very
kind
good.
of the dynamics that you really hit a lot on. And I think let's just kind of now move into season 5, because there was a lot of things where it just doesn't make sense. Now, granted, I love the ending. I think mostly because I get closure and I'm like, hey, like it's done. But there's a lot of things where it's like, what the hell? And a part of that is so spoilers if you guys haven't seen Stranger Things season 5. Why are we all in one house?
Oh
Where
my
is this
goodness.
dynamic? And this is where I don't understand of like, we went to California and we did all these other things, and now all of a sudden, here we are just back like nothing happened, and we're all in this house together. That doesn't make any sense to me.
I mean, like, and feel free to correct me with the characters because, like, I'll admit, with a lot of people who've like watched the seasons over and over again in anticipation of the next season, I jammed through 5 seasons. So there's like times where I'm like, who's that character again? It's like the whiny guy. So I think that's what I struggle with is like it felt so rushed that we started in one direction and we had to like get back to the beginning of like, okay, we're in this small town and we're fighting this being, but the characters had all developed in the way that it made no sense to bring them back into like a particular household. And I think the thing I struggled with is like you said, it's like how do we all get here? Because like I don't think they're all friends. Like all the connections don't make sense. Like, you know, when you talk about two like the families, right? Like you talk about Will and you talk about like Mike and their family, right? Like they don't necessarily have that connection in a way that like the two moms would be friends. One's poor, one's like upper middle class suburbanite, like so like you don't see that, so it doesn't really quite make sense on how they get together. Even with like the female characters, like all the female characters struggle to like share space because they weren't necessarily developed in the way that they would naturally be friends. Um, and I think that's what made season 5 in some aspects kind of clunky and weird is that you had to frame it in a way where like, everything was falling apart for like them to be rock bottom and had to like utilize these resources to connect in a way, but it almost was like out of desperation. Like he's like, "Oh, like I'm going to hang out with my buddy's mom," and the mom's like, "Well, I'll go with you." And you're like, "Okay," and then we just find ourselves at the radio tower, just kind of hanging out, discovering plants. And you're like, "That's not necessarily how I thought it was gonna go, but that's how we're here." And now we're here. We should probably save the world, right? Um,
Yeah. Like, oh shit. The military has no idea that there's this giant energy core at this building that they just left abandoned. They're just like, oh no, it's totally fine. Don't worry about it. It It's like, what is going on? How in the world is the military just completely oblivious to the fact that all of this is happening? Their biggest thing is like, we just need to get 11 for her blood. We have 8, but that's not enough. We need 11. What's this verse thing? Don't worry about it. Just get the kids.
Yeah, that was also kind of weird too. I can't say that I really liked the character 8. Um,
Oh, yes.
and that's just like in the development and the introduction of character 8, like the perspective of 8. Um, I think there's something lacking because I think that was like the introduction of like what could be like additional, right? That there's just things happening in the background of that supernatural lore. But I don't know if they did it in a way that made you like want to see 8 again. Um, for her to be as significant as she was, or try to make her as significant as she was, um, in a relationship with the rest of the group. Um, that didn't feel organic at all.
So I hated 8 with how her approach to like Hopper was.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I have to respect it because it actually felt very much in line with her character when they first introduced her.
Yes, like
Right?
the
Right.
rebellious like alternative to, we're both like supernatural bad girls, and the world's done so many terrible things to us and we had to make our own way. Um but to like be removed for multiple seasons or multiple years. I say seasons, it's like multiple years. And to come back and like, hey, I know you haven't seen me in a long time. I know we connected in this short period of time, but I want you to trust me again wholeheartedly and ignore your father figure. you
The guy
know,
that's been like working and training with you and everything else, like, nah, dude, I got this with image magic. I'm going to
right.
make a deception. Here's a part that I didn't like. So we see that she's created this, delusion, distraction, right? This projected image, and as they're in the car, they're driving away,
Mm.
and she's like, "Oh, I lost signal. I'm out of my distance range." She is in the Department of Energy Science building, yet she's projecting this image all the way to downtown. She just naturally knows when she needs to do it so 11 can get away. I instantly picked up on that. I'm like, there's no way this happened. There's no way this happened. And there's no way that she magically, as she is dying, has the power now to do this for 11. It was just completely bad, in my opinion.
Yeah. I So this is where, and maybe like me being like, I say when it comes to like literature and like folklore and like being a nerd of like a jack of all trades and master of all none, right? Where I struggle, where the framing of everything is like under like the guise of like Dungeons and Dragons, and not necessarily being so immersed in that I'm like, well, how do these characters connect in a way that's with like this particular system? How do things go out, right? So like, is this one of those times where someone has his ability, like as a dying role, to like do something heroic in a way that your character wouldn't necessarily do, but it still like impacts like the rest of the party to kind of move things forward? And I'm like, okay, like in the air of desperation for someone love you pull things off, right? Moms can lift cars and trucks. Dad is able to like fight off like an alligator. Cool. I can project further than I normally have in my dying breath. I got it, whatever. Still don't like you as a character. uh I help that you're moving the story along, but I don't know that you brought so much to it that like we lost again some really crucial time in the development of the other characters and how they've like really dealt with like their own trauma, and their own progression in this like particular world, and how they've like matured to a way that like I really care enough about you and your progress when I haven't seen you for three seasons. um but I don't want to give her more time than she has because I think she already had enough time as it is.
Okay. So speaking of characters that we have issues with, I guess I have issues with a lot of characters. The one character that I really got pissed off with, one of them was Max. And
Okay.
here's my thing. Okay, so here's my thing. You are this caring individual who is trying to save Holly. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, girl, you got this. There's my little portal window. I'm jumping through and going back to my man and my people. Like, that was so out of character for Max, I believe, that I was so angry with it.
I mean, I can definitely see the dilemma with that, right? Because like Max comes in as like again this like spiritual character who was kind of on the fringe of the group. She's a part of the group, but she's more connected to like one of the like male leads, right? So like she doesn't necessarily have her own like she does in was it season two when we kind of get introduced to like her and like Billy and you kind of get a little bit of like the like her past and like the trauma and like her reluctancy to like be connected to people. So I guess for me, like it's kind of on par of like she's growing and developing as a person. And the fact that she's at a point where she could like lead someone, but she's like, I can only take you so far. And I'm like, okay, well, that for me, that's like, well, that's a very Max thing, right? Like, but with that being said, she had already been there for a long time. And I'm just thinking about me, right? I'm like, yo, I've been trapped here for like goodness knows how long. And you got your little bubble, I got a little bubble. I just met you, girl. Like I know of you. Like you just so happen to be like me, a side character to a group of boys that gets a little bit of airtime. I need you to go in your bubble. I'm gonna go in my bubble, right? um now if Max had been developed like some of the other female characters as being a little bit more maternal, I think we would have necessarily saw Max take like a stance that like some of the other female leads would, which was very protective. But I don't think we ever watched Max be a maternal protective character. I think Max as a character had like
Mm,
learned to be more cooperative and less selfish, but Max in the early aspect of her, it was like in survival mode, right? She didn't have a great household. She's in a new area. Like she's learning to like cooperate with people, so everything she does is almost like adjacent. It's very much like, watching small kids play together. Like they play beside each other, they're not playing with each other. So I think Max's character does a lot of things adjacent. And I think that's her development is learning to be a little bit more maternal and more protective. And I think we see that with Holly, but I don't think it's polished in the way that we see with um like I said, the other female leads.
okay, all right.
Um, I think of like the mall, right? We think about the mall scene. We think about her awkward interaction with Eleven, right? And she's like, "Oh, let's talk about boys and let's try to be like girlfriends for this little bit." And it's very surface level, very superficial of like, I'm dumping you. Like I dumped my boyfriend. Other like we're dumping you. Say we're dumping you, and we're gonna do this montage of like capitalism and the mall, and then at the end of it because we never really bonded, we're gonna get on the bus and we're gonna dump them again, and then we're never gonna be friends again. um, we'll stand beside each other, but we won't have any other meaning relationship after this.
It's it just seemed very out of character. And then you bring her back just to keep her in a wheelchair the whole time, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was now granted, I also had a problem with Jurassic Park scene of we literally almost went frame by frame in making Jurassic Park in the laundry bin area as we're trying to wait for Max to wake up.
Oh my
Where
goodness.
you have these demigorgons who are great at homing in on their people, on their targets, but all of a sudden they get near laundry detergent and a spin cycle and they're just clueless.
So tell me how like that and like the raptor and Jurassic Park are like so because again, I feel like the demographic of people that we're like really trying to appeal to for this show are people who grew up with that particular scene, right? Um, and I feel like Jurassic Park always has that scene. Like in
You're
some
not wrong.
aspects, like I was thinking about it, I was like, did Goldblum have that scene? Like I'm pretty sure he had that scene. Anyway, yeah, but again, it's like the weirdness of like the dynamic of the group and like how that plays out because it kind of leans into like this 80s like feminist like weekend mentality, right? Where I think for a lot of movies prior to that, like female leads weren't necessarily like heroic. It's like damsel in distress or like character adjacent or like, sex appeal. And I think this is where things have kind of gone on the hedge because like we have like this fringe character and oh my goodness, whose mom is this? I guess we say spoilers, right? Because they're in the laundry scene. We've got Max who's being rescued, but we have like the most ridiculous character comes in and is like blowing people up. Um,
I did have a problem with that as well. Of like, it, yeah. Well, what you had talked about too was how you know, Nancy, or was it Nancy Wheeler? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. She she's been through a lot, right?
yeah.
And we talked about that. But then Mr. Wheeler, Ted,
Oh my
he
goodness.
is in the beginning. He has this little part, and from what it looks like, he gets completely shredded. But then all of a sudden, at the very end, he's there for graduation. Like, where
So can
was
we
he throughout the whole thing?
can we talk about the Wheelers? Because I
Yeah,
feel
let's just
like
talk about it.
because I feel like that in its aspect is like unique, right? Because we have Mike and Will,
Right.
right? And they have two different family dynamics. Um, and Mike, who I really think was supposed to be like kind of like a main character. Um, but I think Mike was supposed to be secondary to Will in some aspect to it. But the Wheelers in general, I don't know if they necessarily were supposed to be as pivotal as they were because Nancy just completely just goes unhinged. Is that the sister? Right?
Which one?
Is Nancy um Mike's
Yeah.
sister?
Oh
So
no,
like
I was
how did
thinking Karen Wheeler. Sorry, Karen Wheeler. Nancy, I don't
right.
have any issues with. It's Karen. My bad. My bad. I've
So
got
I
the
had
cast list up here, but their
yeah.
images are so small that I can hardly see like who's who. So yeah.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. I thought about like just pulling up a little thing of the cast because like to make sure I didn't ruin anyone. I was like, he'll correct me. It's fine. I was like, if someone to correct me, like it's okay. I get corrected all the time. I'm gonna. But all right, so like I have issues with the Wheelers, but not I guess in the same sense. Like, okay, so the Wheelers are this like very stereotypical like 80s like white picket fence family where everything appears to be okay, right? But I guess I struggle with it because the betrayal of like the male figure of the dad, we said Ted Wheeler,
Yeah.
is a very like he's like financially supportive, but emotionally like not there. And I guess that's how we want to portray American men, where Karen is also kind of portrayed in a way where like she's yearning for more and a little bit of like the emotion and a little bit of like being seen as a woman and not necessarily seen as like just as a mom. And I think you see that development. And I think that feels very natural.
Right.
Nancy, I think, gets the perk of 11 as far as her development because I think Nancy would have probably been a little bit more along the lines of like the Lois Lane esque type, right? But I don't know if she would have got that little like Rambo spice um, if it wasn't for the fact that like Mike was always chasing 11. The Wheelers are always in danger, and so Nancy, um, who is basically the consequence of Karen who like is supposed to be smart and is supposed to be very independent. Nancy really just gets to express what Karen wants to be. And I think in season 4 and season 5, you get to see Karen kind of like fall in line with that trope. And I think that's why you get a lot of Karen in season 5. But I again don't think we would have seen the Wheelers develop in a way if we didn't focus on 11. I think we if we had focused on Will, I think Nancy would have still been there, but I think Will's brother would have had the perk of like developing into like a little bit of a leading man, a little bit of someone who's like a protector. And I think he was, but like he took like more of a feminist, like emotional lead of support of like Will and all the other characters and of his mom, where Nancy got to like really lean into like the weapons expert, like the one who's spearheading these things, the one who's like counter and helping the training of the stuff in the background, the one who's like really helping pushing the envelope of like fighting off the Marines, um, which I think is cool. I don't think it was like a bad thing. I think it's cool. I just don't know we would have got that if 11 wasn't the focus of a lot of the story.
It is interesting how, Will Byers is the one that's taken, right? And kicks off all this thing. But it's really the Wheelers who are the fucking victims and just get fucked up for the entire series.
Oh my goodness. Let's talk about it, right? Like the one boy falls in love with a bald headed like psychic. The other one gets kidnapped by um like and then like the baby is kidnapped by
Well,
like
Nancy's best friend is killed and taken as she
oh
tries
my
to hook up with Steve.
oh
I
yeah.
mean, yeah.
Oh, talking about just taking L's for no reason. Um, poor dad's working 9 to 5. He's like the neighborhood kids are running me dry. He gets like just shredded by a demon that looks like a flower of 4 legs. Um, so the Wheelers, right, absolutely get wrecked. Um, but I think more people will connect with the Wheelers than the Buyers, right? Because
Oh,
the Wheelers
100%.
that was like the quintessential Americana family. Both parents, multiple kids, 2.5 kids, middle class, not really struggling, thinking about like what's next, like what direction you want to go to as far as college being an option, having those conversations, being able to participate in like recreational sports and do all of those things, right? Survival is not a thing. They're really living like the American dream in a way that I think most people thought or wanted to
Experience.
experience, right? So I think that's kind of cool. I think the Buyers are probably what like more people wanted to escape from of like the broken household with like one parent who's not supportive and another parent who can't figure out the economy is like in the tank with one kid who's dealing with some things we don't really like want to talk about right now. It's like a little taboo. I don't know if he's on a spectrum. I don't know if he likes girls, so like there's just like so many aspects of those things that I think were kind of funny. Um but the Wheelers, man, like I think you were spot on. Like the Wheelers just get wrecked. Just get wrecked.
Yeah, and that's where like I love Holly's character. I love the innocence that she brought to the season, which granted, I think they took a lot of liberties with like the gore and the horror aspect. Like I think they were like, hey, we have this fan base who's been with us for 10 years. They're all adults now. They can take this level. And I'm like, oh shit, like I feel like you guys took it up one more level than what you had, which I'm like, I don't know if that was necessarily needed, but like, I love the innocence of Holly when she's in Vecna's mind and she's like dancing around the bedroom, playing with all these things, experiencing this. Like, I love that innocent take. I loved her character and how she was brought into it all. And I think it really does ramp things up. But I'm it, I'm really frustrated. Where is he? With Jonathan Byers' character. This guy who is just so passively like, oh, whatever you want, whatever you want. Nancy is just like, just G.I. Jane ready to blow up the world, and I love it. I'm all for it. But Jonathan just never gets this, aggressive tendency unless it's with, who is it? Steve. Like, he is much really, he would rather fight Steve than he would a Demigorgon, it feels like.
No, absolutely. And
And I'm like, bro, where are we at with this?
yeah, no, Jonathan is a I think Jonathan is a character that developed that could like again like developed with the most space he had because there was so much that needed to happen in such a confined space. I think once we saw the pivot go from like being the like the Will and his like support system over more to like Mike and his support system and like focusing on the Wheelers, I don't think you really get to give the opportunity for Jonathan to develop because he is like supportive in nature, right? Like he is like the male figure in the
Okay, that's
household,
true.
although he's
That's
not the
true. Yeah.
lead.
Hmm.
Um, but like, his mom has to develop as a character to kind of like develop with Hopper, who, in some aspects did get to be supportive of 11, but I don't think again, it's focused on 11, right? It's focused on her and her development. And we get to kind of watch Will just kind of sit in the background, not flourish, not develop, Um, we watch Jonathan watch Will struggle of not being the focus of something, which, um, I think that's a complex scenario in itself because I don't know, like, season four left something to be desired when it came to Will, that haircut and that development. But the whole California thing didn't feel great for them because California was the framing for 11,
Yeah.
right? Um, it's like 11 lost Hopper. 11 needs to develop. 11, doesn't connect with anybody. Like she's trying to become a whole rounded person. And her support system is the kid who was kidnapped, who's having nightmares, just connects to this whole thing, right? So how are we supposed to like feel bad for 11 when her support system has been kidnapped multiple times? Like he has been the victim of the most traumatic things, and she's looking at him and he's like, yeah, I get that people are mean to you, and although I was kidnapped multiple times and I was held hostage and some creepy dude put things down my throat and make me do unbearable things and almost kill the town, I definitely see why you can't make friends. um so buck up. Like
It's just like at this point, bro, you fucked up my family. You fucked up my friend's family, my girlfriend's family. You fucked up this whole town. My whole life has changed. You know what? I'm gonna come fuck you up now. Like, where's this drive? It's just so frustrating. But one of the things that I love with that dynamic is that I absolutely love Steve and Dustin's characters. The guy that I originally hated, I now absolutely love. And what I love about it, I think, is he has been one of the most consistent characters of here's my redemption arc. I realize I was an asshole. I'm changing my ways. And now I am trying to help everyone hold it together, stay united in what we're doing. And then I love this dynamic of Dustin, who has got this major trauma from Eddie and losing Eddie, and now he doesn't want to lose anyone else, but he doesn't know how to express that. And so I absolutely loved that dynamic going through the story.
okay, I'm gonna go off camera for a second. I'm like only because I have to find my cable and I don't want anyone to see like all my boxes. Um
Because your battery's almost dead, isn't it?
yeah, because I was like, wait a minute, I got all right. So like I just want to say, and I'll take heat for this, I don't like Eddie as a character.
Oh, that's right. You did say that.
And
Yeah.
I liked I liked Eddie for what Eddie was. But I struggled with like us wanting to give Eddie way more kudos than what I think Eddie deserves in season five. I think the big conflict between like Steve and Dustin, I think was like fair, and I appreciate that they had to have that coming, those moments, those blows, and because they have a very sibling like relationship, and for the
Right.
most part, Steve had like been Dustin's like guy, right? That's like, how do we talk to girls? How do
No, I lost you. You must be in the part of the house. You must be near the kitchen, I think, because I think it's always the kitchen where you.
The girls,
There you.
like
Hey,
being
we
like
lost
the
you for
go-to
like 10
guy.
seconds.
Oh crap! Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, we lost you for like 10 seconds.
Okay, so like what I like about Eddie is Eddie pushes the conversation forward with Dustin and Steve, and like they get to like they get to like progress more, and like their development and their friendship. But Eddie himself, as a character, I don't know if I really care for him and like his heroic antics because I just don't think like it didn't really do anything. Like we really like think about like what happened to that season and like the consequences of it and like what did you really do? Like it was
Well,
cool.
he was that sacrificial lamb, right, to get everyone else to safety. But another part that we'll talk about here is the inconsistencies of the Upside Down, where the fuck did all those creatures go? They
Right?
just like completely ate Eddie, just like a tornado of vampire Karens, alien creatures floating around. But then all of a sudden, nah, nothing to worry about. None of that stuff. It's all good. But I still love Eddie. I still love Eddie, man.
I think he's probably one of the most charismatic characters.
Well, he was. I think he was that perfect part. Like he was that character that everyone was afraid of back in the '80s, who was all about Dungeons and Dragons and heavy metal and punk rock. Like, just yeah, man. And he, a lot of people were afraid of those people because they didn't understand him. And it makes sense why he was so connected to the group. Why the group, the D&D group, was so because you had the jocks, you had those other things, and then here's Eddie who just doesn't give a shit. He's got the confidence, he's got the charisma, and all the other kids that don't really have that development because they're the weird ones, they are naturally drawn to that, and they latch onto that, and they follow that as their leader. And the leader does the leader thing of sacrificing himself. And now we don't have that. So who do we have that's closest to that? Steve, who has bridged the gap and who has like, you know what? These are my little children. These are my little Padawans, and I will protect them. And we just haven't dealt with that trauma yet.
So, okay, so are you saying that you feel that like Eddie was like counter to Steve? Are you saying that like Eddie? I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little biased because I just like it felt like very not rushed. Like I definitely got the subculture, the counterculture aspects of like the Hellfire Club and like him and like his group of people and like how they move that particular season forward and like him having connections to like a lot of the victims and how that works out. I got that. I can appreciate that. I just don't know if we needed to bring him up so much in season 5 for what he really contributed, right? Because I felt there was people that we should have talked about all season long who got less like airtime about their contribution to like our group than Eddie. And you're like, yes, he did this cool thing for this moment. Yes, we appreciate what you've done, but for goodness sake, like
I just pictured you as a dungeon master, and I have to say, man, you would be so legalistic. No, that character can't do that. We have to give this person their shot.
I know, right? It's just like everyone gets their time to shine. You had your opportunity, right? And I think you did an okay job with it. But like, let's move on. Like, yeah, yeah, okay. We love your development. Let's just
Let's
push
let
it
the
forward.
cleric do some stuff for once, guys. Like, come on, cleric, get in here.
Okay, so can we talk about can we talk about like what the characters are supposed to be and like what their connections are? Because I feel like that in itself is like some of the things that kind of like concerned me. It's
Okay, go
like,
ahead.
okay, so Will is supposed to be a sorcerer, right?
Yes. Well, no, Will's the dungeon master, isn't he?
I thought Mike was the dungeon master.
That's right. Mike was the one. Yeah, Mike was the dungeon master. Will, yeah, Will is like a sorcerer spellcaster,
Okay.
which I've got some major issues with him. But
No, absolutely. Like, so like he's supposed to be okay.
there
And
you are.
adjust a
Yeah.
little bit. Like I was like, all right, unprepared. It's a Saturday. Never prepared on a Saturday. Uh, okay, so I always thought Mike was like kind of a dungeon master, right? Because I always thought Mike was, and this is why I feel like Mike was like the main character, or should have been the main character. Um, is because Mike is always like the one kind of framing things and telling the story, right? Like he's involved with a lot of things, but I don't always feel that like he's like pushing it. I feel like he's just kind of like the center of a lot of stuff. Um, Will I struggle with, right? Because I was like, I don't know. Like obviously he's supposed to like be some like magical based character, but like the victimism in the beginning and like the lack of development, I'm like, really what I don't know what he's supposed to do here. Um and then me not like I said, not being so versed in Dungeons and Dragons, I'm like, is he a wizard? Is he a sorcerer? And then like me not really, I mean, I know a slight difference of like where you get your magic from and like, whether there's a patron or whether it's like innate. I know like they kind of talk about that their story, but like he's not any of those things. Um, I don't know. So and then Dustin, right? So what is Dustin?
That's a good question.
So like, is he a bard?
Dust, Dustin always has the answer. You know what? I could see that as a bard because he's always trying to ramp up everyone.
Like, and I say that, and I was like, maybe he's a bard because like he's a theater kid as like a professional, like, you know, not the character, but the actual actor himself, like has a background as like theater, and obviously we get to like have that really awesome but kind of cringe moment of singing to his girlfriend in season 3 to get her to kind of help. She's singing a never ending story.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
so I
the
was like,
person that we
maybe
just don't even use anymore.
the girlfriend.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, like I feel like I appreciate her contribution to the story more than I appreciated 8. Um,
That's fair.
I
That's totally
I
fair.
feel like because my feeling with that is like she was a part of Dustin's development, right? Like because the
Mhm.
boys were coming of age, and it was like really funny because he's this really nerdy, smart kid, and he's like, I have a girlfriend, and they're like, yeah, whatever. Um, it, and it's such like a boy thing. You're like, yeah, I went to this really nerdy camp and I met some girl who's into all these things, and everyone's like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. You've got this girlfriend in Canada, and then she actually appears, and was like, oh, like she's smart too, and she's smarter than you. That's actually kind of phenomenal. All right. Um, so I love that for him because again, in my head, the boys are this is a comedy story for the boys and their friendship, and that's a big part of like them going forward. Like girls are a big part of the story, right? Um, and he's just one of those characters you don't think is gonna like move that direction, and he kind of moves that, which is funny because like Lucas is a little bit more like obvious because him and Dustin are both going over Max, but um, I don't know if I like that. But anyway, we can talk about that later. I don't know if Lucas is supposed to be a knight. or a warrior of some aspect.
I could see him being either like fighter or paladin. I would say probably paladin. He wasn't OP powerful, but he was always like he had that little struggle where he was with the basketball players. They were trying to get him away from the group, but like he morally felt wrong for doing it and knew that he needed to be with his group. And so I just feel like he's always trying to do the right thing. He's trying to, pull Max out of her trance. He's always staying faithful to her. So I just feel like this really, kind of a paladin knight thing for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like if he wasn't, I just feel like
He
he
didn't
did a
do
lot of
shit at the
hiding.
final battle, though. That's for damn sure.
No, okay, so this is the thing that also threw me off too. Is like he had a slingshot through a lot of this series, right? But he's not a rogue.
Definitely not a rogue. Yeah, I would definitely not put him as a rogue.
Right. So that's what I was like, what are you? Because I feel like everything you do has to do with like something like from a distance. That's your contribution. He does a lot of running. He took a lot of hits. But he's not a tank. He was definitely not someone who's out here like throwing up shields and blockades and things like
If
that.
anything, Dustin would be a tank because that kid did get the shit kicked out of him multiple times, which is
Yeah.
that did not need to happen in season 5. That was to me that was just lazy writing
Wait, where did he get beat up?
at the cemetery with Eddie, and then of course like no one knew where he was. Like he just got
Oh,
his ass kicked, and you know
yeah. But I felt like that was like the story for him and Steve. Like I feel like that was like his whole trauma and not dealing with it and like losing I don't know, losing himself and I felt like that yeah, I don't know. Like I guess
like
like
I don't mind that they kicked the shit out of him, but they could have just brought him back and then be like, dude, what happened to you? Like, don't worry about it, and
yeah,
they could have just built the tension. There's just no need to put him all the way out there like that.
yeah. All right, so what is Nancy? So like all right, so we talked about so I think that Mike is a DM. Will, like I said, is some magical creature, magical character. Don't really know what he's contributing. I think Dustin's probably more of a bard who like a different subclass.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then like Lucas is some aspect as a fighter, but I don't think he like is like on the tankier side like a paladin. Um, so probably like a warrior. Um, I would think that like Max would probably be something on like the spiritual side, only because of season 5, right? That she like does have the opportunity to kind of have a little bit of a redemption with Holly,
Hmm.
and she's able to kind of help navigate that. But she
She's
also
definitely
acts
like
as
a
a guide.
druid.
Yeah, but she acts as a guide for both 11 and 8 in some aspect too. She's like, which I thought was kind of unique. Um, But then Nancy, I don't know what the hell Nancy is other than unhinged. Um,
I did love her and John, like the final scene where they thought they were gonna die. I actually
mm,
really love that scene where they're just like, you know what? It doesn't fucking matter. No more, hiding behind the obvious. Here you go. And then just having that moment of honesty and clarity, and then it's just like, yeah, that's what needed to happen. Because to a certain point, their whole relationship did feel so unnatural. And like it didn't feel like the writers forced it, but the characters were forcing it for their own self-interest reasons. So to have that moment, I just felt such a relief, and I loved how they portrayed it as actors as well as putting it into the story.
yeah, I
But
mean that's like my least favorite relationship is like
I think it
those
was
two.
everyone's least favorite relationship.
Like again, I feel like if we didn't have to go on this journey of like splitting the team to like go to Russia, to go to California, to develop these additional characters again for the framing of 11, right? To dive deeper into like the lore of like what's really happening behind the curtain and less on like the characters dealing with like the supernatural aspect of it. I think we could have seen like a better development of that relationship of or how that would have like portrayed itself. I think the ending of season 5 made things like corrected things in a way that I think no one really was anticipating, right? As
Right.
like we've had years of trauma, we had years of things happening, and this is like the reality of it. And I don't want to like say what the last episode was, but what I do want to say is that like it was the reality of life. It's like, all right, we were kids, we thought these things were happening, and now that things have settled and trauma settled, and we're like back to being humans. Eh, eh. Just
I don't know. And see, here's the thing. Like when we think of a tank, we think of this big giant person who is a tank, right? They're supposed to take on these physical attributes of a tank. But Nancy just keeps like plowing through. And so I'm like, well, she kind of has this assassin type feel for me to her. She has this rogue type feel where she's, she is willing to go against the grain. She doesn't mind getting lost and exploring like a ranger. It's a very unique character. I just don't know where to place her because she keeps going forward no matter what.
what do you think Mike is probably not Mike? Do you think Lucas is probably more of a ranger? Because he did a lot of running, he was kind of athletic, he had his slingshot, and he found himself in like I'm thinking like in season 5, he was like really pivotal in like moving people through tunnels. He's always done a lot of
Oh,
scouting, and I've
that's a
never
good
really
point.
thought about that. That like he's the one that, like he had to like outrun the basketball team. He's the one that had to do a lot of misdirection. He's the one who like did a lot of surveillance. Was like, hey, this is what's going on. I'm trying to let you guys know. So I feel like Mike being the athletic guy was probably closer to being like a ranger,
That would be, yeah.
than Nancy would have been. But like, but Nancy I feel like it's just like completely offensive. Like she's like pushing everything forward. It's just like completely offensive. And again, this is where like my lack of D&D as far as characters. I'm like, I don't know which particular character or which class of characters align with somebody who does a lot of ranged things because she was really good at like weapons from the very beginning, from season 1. She's like, hey, I'm the suburbanite, like really popular girl, but I can shoot a rifle. And then she's like, and shotguns, right? And pistols. So I don't know, like, if I consider Tanks more defensive, right? I feel it's like someone who holds the line, who does like who takes a lot of hits, right? I think Hopper is probably more of a tank
Oh, that's a good point. Yep. Yep. For sure.
because Hopper has to take a lot of heat for 11 to figure things out, and they're dynamic. Like he's very supportive of her, he's very protective of her. She's purely offense. He's purely defense, and I think that's just like him being paternal in nature, right? So I think for me, he's the tank.
That, yeah. Yep. And he's willing to blow himself up.
Yeah,
Just, yeah.
yeah,
Which it's like, what were you going to do with that, dude? What were you going to accomplish there? Nothing. Dumbass.
right. No, like that's like they're like,
But
what's your
that's
plan?
totally a tank thing of like, dude, I'm going to sacrifice myself for everyone else. Don't worry about it.
Like he blew up. He's still here. Well, yeah, he's a tank. And he's an alcoholic. Like yeah. um,
so to switch over a little bit with Will, here's the problem I have with this. To go back to Will. Oh my god, I have discovered I also have this power. Oh my god, I just fucked Vecna up. I fucked him up and showed him I have power. 2 episodes later, oh my god, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. This is really hard. I can't fight him anymore. I'm struggling. Oh, here we are at the very end. Oh yeah, I can barely do anything. It's like, bro, the inconsistency with this ramp up. You're able to fuck Vecna up, like truly fuck him up, break his bones and body, and then all of a sudden you can't even hurt a fly anymore.
yeah. No, I I don't disagree with that. And I think that's where like the lack of development of Will definitely shows the consequences later on, like, as we progress through the season, because Will is emotionally unstable. um Will
Facts.
is the only one who's like endured trauma every season in some capacity, right? Like, Will gets kidnapped, Will comes back and has nightmares, Will sees demons, Will has an alcoholic dad who seems kind of abusive, Will has a crush on his best friend who is like, what do you mean you don't like girls, right? Will
Completely
gets
oblivious to all of it.
right. Terrible DM. What do you mean you're not following the story, sir? um, but like, but I think what's like crazy about this, again, if this is really framed around like D&D loosely, right? And then like Will's a character that has like some dabbling into like magic of some capacity, right? I think most people in most systems, magic is kind of fickle. And it is, if like, and it really depends on like where like the origin of like it is coming from. So if it's like all innate, right, then it's like an intro, like an inner look of like what's supposed to be happening here. If it's a patriot, a patron of like some deity that's like really that we're like getting this from, then like of course it's not working out because he only has his powers because of like the big baddie of the entire thing says you can have it. And he's like, you think you just accidentally got this? No. I let you have these powers because who do you think made these tunnels? Who do you think is the reason why the city is under like destruction? Is because I gave you the ability to do it. And now that I'm aware that you don't want to do it for the right way, I'm taking it from you. So in that aspect, I'm like,
Mhm.
it does make sense, right? Like if he really is getting his powers, Vecna, right? I because I was gonna say Henry. I was like, is he really getting his powers from Henry? But like,
Same,
if he's
same.
really, yeah, if he's really getting his powers from that particular character, um, it would make sense then like that it doesn't go the way he wants because their relationship is very hostile, right? Like when he was submissive, when he was weak, he had the powers, but he had no control over it. Now he's trying to grow into his own, and now he's trying to use it in a way that like, Henry's like, yeah, no, that's not how that works out. Of course there's gonna be some faltering and flaws, right? Because like the person who gave him the power is like, give him back. That's not how that works. And I think that does go in line with some aspects of like the magical character he was supposed to be. But I also just think that it also goes in line with like the fact that he's a poorly emotionally developed character who's never allowed to like really reconcile with the trauma he has, and he's just been left in the background because we're all watching, 11 become a Super Saiyan. Like she's like flying over like tractor trailers and snapping necks, and I think in one scene she almost looks like Wanda from like WandaVision. She like floats and she lands in like a superhero promotion and she's like, ah, and she rips out men's souls. I'm like, what is happening here? Um, didn't realize it was a Marvel movie. Um, so, so I truly do think that like the lack of Will's power and development, it's all in line with the fact that we had to focus so much of that interest in like 11, because these are two characters that are supposed to have like some type of magical likability, but we like the overpowered, we like the progression, we like the montage of like how to get better. We struggled with Will because Will isn't good at this. Will is good sometimes, not all the time, and Will's not consistent. And we try and Will fails. We don't want that. But we go back to 11 and you're like, oh my God, she flies now. Did you know she flies now? She flies now. And she floats and she levitates. Like it's,
She does all these
it's,
powerful things, yet Hopper won't let her go out for a milkshake.
oh my goodness. Right. As the tank he is.
Which I really enjoyed Murray's character who brings him all the supplies. I love him and Hopper having that joking moment in the Humvee together as they're driving out. I thought that was pretty funny. Um,
Yeah. I think he's just probably like, I won't even put him as a class. Like I just think he's like everyone's favorite NPC. Like he just pops in and out. And he's just like, hey, I heard you need guns. Sassy, sassy, sassy.
Like,
Funny,
hey,
funny, funny.
I got you a toothbrush. I asked for a knife. It's the same thing, isn't it? No.
Yeah,
Like, oh, well, here you go, anyways. Like, bro.
yeah. I think he's just our favorite NPC. Like, because he just contributes enough to make things like lighthearted and funny, and like adds the dialogue. But he also like gives us supplies that we need to move to like the next stage as we're leveling up. Like we're like in the cave trying to like figure out how to move on, and he's just like, oh, I have this chest that I always bring with me, and it has weapons for you and weapons for you and nothing for you because I don't like you. Like that's just like what
Yeah.
he brings to the story. I don't think it's supposed to be any deeper than that. Like he just is a vehicle to provide them resources to continue to like move the story along.
He is the guy. We all need a
Yeah.
guy because he's able
Yes.
to get us in and out of Russia, completely in and out of Russia. And then all of a sudden, just like, oh, yeah, I got whatever you need. Like, here you go. Um,
And I like that, right?
Very
Because we don't
interesting.
question it. We don't know a lot
Yeah.
about him, but I think that's what makes it unique. Is like we know he has a background. We don't know a lot about his background, but we do know that he's the guy who can get you whiskey in the desert, right? So he can do the things for us, and we never think much of it. We just call him. We're like, "Hey, I hadn't seen you forever," and he's like, "Oh, nice that you call me that you need something, but I still have it. I'll still take care of you. I have a plane that'll take you to Russia. You can go find your tank lady. Well, we'll get out of Russia." We'll meet this guy who likes peanut butter.
Who doesn't love peanut butter?
No, no.
So Robin's character, I
Mm,
loved I love the initial dynamic of how they introduced it with the radio station and the military. That was like very 80s. It was very realistic with that dynamic. And so I loved you have this broadcaster, and we already established her lesbian, storyline and everything else. So like that's totally fine. I enjoyed her character. I enjoy the quirkiness of her. I think it's great. I loved her being the person that helps Will discover himself. I thought
mhm.
that was great. I like the way they portrayed her and the nurse. Very cute, very good, whatever. But that coming out scene, I
Ugh.
here's the problem. Okay, guys, we need to get ready to go kick some ass on this other planet. Hold on, rally the wagons. Everyone needs to be here for this announcement. It was just, I would have been like, bro, shut the hell up. We need to go do this right now. I don't care what you got to tell us. We need to do this. This is the point we're at of the story. If they had moved that entire thing to like episode 4 timeline way, I would have been fine with it. And then we could have had the more natural like moments for him and Mike to have their little sidebar conversation, him and
Mm.
Dustin or someone else to have the sidebar conversation. But instead, we have nope, everything stops for this moment. And then of course you have him and Mike up on the tower having a 10-second conversation before we go on to another planet that is going to kill all of us allegedly. It was so bad. And I'm just like, if you just put this in scene in episode 4, he sees them kissing, they have that conversation a little later, something, but that entire trajectory was so badly timed. I just couldn't stand that.
I don't disagree. I think it should have been important for the character development because of, again, me going back to the framing of like the four boys, the coming of like age story,
Right.
them developing as friends. I think because again, we stepped away from like really focusing on that core group of people. You don't get
Yeah.
to have that conversation naturally, right? Because I think Mike and Will are supposed to be best friends.
Right.
And if we had focused on their friendship and we had focused on them fighting through the dynamics of like the supernatural and all these characters, I think that conversation would have happened in a very natural way with the boys.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jonathan has always known, and I think that's why Jonathan as a character is softer as a male character because he's protective of Will because he knows that Will is like different. right? I
Mhm.
don't think I don't think to the sense of like we know like what different is, but I think that we know that Jonathan knows that Will is different, and so he feels the need to like look out for Will in a way because he's unsure of like how the world's going to receive him. Like I said, I don't know if he's gay. I don't know if he's on the spectrum. I don't know if he's dumb. Like I just know that Will, maybe he's weak, maybe he's a wimp, but we just know that like Will is different, and we know that Jonathan, as an older brother, knows that instinctively and is like, okay, I have to protect my younger brother against a lot of things. And I think that's why you see a lot of like Jonathan's character acting and betraying like his concern for Will through like mirrors and pictures and the background, as well as like kind of put in these situations where like he wants to help and protect, but he can't, right? But he's like there and he's very hyper vigilant and aware of the things that are happening to Will.
Right.
I think I agree with you. That episode I think was poorly done in a way that like it did not give credit to the complexity of like the nature of that in the 80s. I think the 80s have lots of characters who have been um gay or lesbian or like not necessarily like heteronormative. And I think what they did to push that further was sloppy, right? Because I think if we went back to like what I felt the premise would have been was the coming age of the boys and them developing, and then Mike having his first like encounter with the girls, and Lucas and Dustin's competing over Max and what that looks like, and then them going through school and the very awkward, gaudy phase of like dances and kisses, and then everyone's like trying to figure out what their date is for this whole thing, and then Will's like, I don't have a date, like that would have like progressed naturally as a friend group if we had an opportunity to kind of
That's
see.
such a great point right there. If you had stayed with the boy group, and then they're like, hey, like, going to the dance, like, whatever, like, Will, who are you taking? I don't know. I don't have anyone. Like,
Right.
that actually would have been so much more natural.
And I think this is where Will's mom and Jonathan would have been so pivotal, and like how supportive they are of that character, right? They were designed in a way to be supportive of Will. But because of like how everything changes, they become support characters for the rest of the crew. And Will doesn't necessarily like we know they're supportive of Will, but like those characters become supportive of Nancy. They become supportive of Hopper. They become supportive of Eleven, right? I really do think Mike was supposed to be the main character. Will was supposed to be, or Will was supposed to be the main character, right? He's the one who's kidnapped, and we're focusing on Will and
Well,
how we
both
go
of
through
them,
this.
right? Like, side by
Yeah,
side, tandem in tandem, growing up. Yep.
yeah. But we don't, right? So, but it's so important to the character because it's like, well, why did Will get kidnapped? Well, Will got kidnapped because he had been identified as a weaker, softer character who is easy to manipulate, which kind of falls into this whole trope of like of gay boys. And so I think they could have done a good job of like not necessarily like talking about sexuality, but they could have talked about like why that character was kidnapped, and how we got there. And then that also could have been really good of like, why do we kidnap these other kids? Like, what is it about these other kids that had very similar characteristics to Will? Whether it's like being outcast or being nerdy or being intelligent, or having like poor family dynamics. Like we could have like figured out of like really what is Henry looking for in these kids, and why are we trying to do this? But instead, we get this really rushed thing of like, Will's gay, right? We've known Will's been gay. We know Will's been odd for like the beginning. The characters have like thrown little quirks at him. It's like it's not our fault you don't like girls. So the boys are already aware that like so there's something different to Will, but we never talk about it on a level that's really productive. It's always said in a way that's like hurtful. Is like, oh, you're hanging out with 11. It's because you don't like girls. And like, okay, and we never address that again. Um,
Yeah.
the three other boys who are in love with 11 are like really excited with like Max, and Will's not excited about Max. Like, why aren't you excited about Max? Like, why aren't you excited about the new girl? Like there's just so many things that could have been done in a way that felt more organic that would have let Will have his moment and even connect with Robin, who was a really great character to like be supportive of like, it's okay that you're a little different for the rest of the cast, and pushing that conversation forward. But I think because it's not done in the way, Robin is thrusted into this role of like, hey, there's the piece of the character that hasn't really came out yet, and I'm here to move this along, right? Hey, I noticed that you looked at Mike a certain way. I look at the nurse a certain way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's move this forward, right? The story's moving along. We got 7 more episodes, bro. Figure it out.
That's where I think them going to California was the worst decision ever, because if you'd kept them in, what was it, Hawkins or whatever, if you kept
Yeah.
them where they started, then you could have had Will going to the mall, and you could have had Will seeing Robin maybe flirting with a worker in the back warehouse area or in the food court. And then you could have had him and her develop, earlier on, to where she is that confidant to be like, hey, it's okay for you to tell your friends. It's okay for you to, like, that could have been so much more natural. But thrusting them into California, you can't develop that connection because they were separated from Robin for so long.
Yeah, I mean, so correct me, right? We're still in town. We're still in town. Season 1. We're still, developing everything, laying down the foundation. We're all in this
Mhm.
small little podunk town, Demogorgons and all that good stuff in Henry. Season 2, same area, Halloween themes, like, Ghostbusters.
Yep. Yep.
Um, Again, introduction to like Max, um, introduction to Billy, um, a little racial tension. Um, okay, so then we go season 3. We haven't left for California yet, have we?
No, it's just season 4, if I remember correctly.
So, and I'm trying to
Yeah,
figure out
season
like,
3 is the mall. So season 1 is our intro. Season 2 is Halloween, like you talked about. Um, and they're kind of figuring out the whole upside down thing. Season 3 is the mall and Russian forces. And then
mm.
season 4, we're in California, Hawkins, and Russia.
Okay, so that's where I think season 3 gets really weird because we don't really see like we see Will, but we don't see Will.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, what is his dynamic? I was like, because oh my goodness, what is his mom's name?
Who will?
Yeah, Will's mom. Yeah.
Joyce?
So Joyce leaves the boys to save Hopper.
Yeah,
No, that's not until season 4, right? That's in California.
correct.
So this is where like I think
I
it was
mean,
some of
you
my
have
frustration.
you have watched seasons 3 and 4 a lot sooner than I have, because I've been following over time. I haven't like rewatched the seasons to watch season 5.
Right. I know a lot of people say they don't like season 3 because season 3 took a really weird spin, but I think season 3 was like kind of crucial for like the character development of like the 80s, right? Because like Americana, capitalism, the mall. I also think this is where we kind of get introduced to like Erica as a better support character. Erica, I think, is if Lucas is a scout, Erica is a rogue.
Mm.
Um,
Okay,
I
yeah,
think, think of like the way she manipulates situations, the way she's able to like, which makes sense, right? That like the two in the same family would have like very similar but different characteristics. Like they're very like are able to get in and out of situations. They're both kind of given the opportunity to like have these missions on their own and relate back to like the people. But I think Erica as a character is um would truly be a rogue because she is more independent than Lucas is. And the
that's
fact that
fair.
like she feels more comfortable of being the go-to person and she's more comfortable in her skill set to be independent to do these things, whether it's like to break into an area, to like go into someone's home and like, enact these things, right? Like she is solid as a solo character who plays nicely with the rest of the group, but does not need to be a part of the group. Um, but like I'm thinking about season three, and I'm like, all right, like Steven is like, is their introduction to Robin. Um, which I think is really pivotal, right? Because she's a linguist. She understands multiple languages. She can translate. She's also persuasive, right? I think this is where like she's like crucial for the crew because she having access to the radio to persuade people to relay some messages. I think that's like a really good character for her, and she's also the one to have to speak for our meathead jock who's going through reform. Like she's like singing for Steve, she's speaking for Dustin, who are not good at communicating. um I think it's a good intro, but I'm just thinking about Will. I'm like, I don't know really what's happening with him in this because everyone else is having these moments, but I think this is where he starts to find himself on the outskirt a little bit because the boys are like with Max, Dustin's with Steve, Steve's with Robin, Nancy is Lois Lane. Joyce is like with Hopper, and so like Will becomes in the background. And I'm like, and I'm having a hard time really just remembering like what is Will doing um in season three that's really productive. But this is also, I think Will is brought in for the essence of like his connection to like Henry and to like the other characters, because this is when we start to notice that like he he can sense these characters. He understands when things are being attacked, but like he becomes very supportive as a character in season three.
Yeah. I think to me, I think I told you like my biggest problem with season three is this whole Russia thing, which total 80s, 100%. But the fact that you have like this Russian military base with Russian military guys underneath a mall, like that, we have this own Russian base under the mall. And we send Hopper to Russia. There's no reason. There's no point. Now, granted, General K or Key, whatever her fucking name is, in season 5 is like, we need this power to fight the Russians. You could have just put a Russian spy in the mall, in Hawkins, to observe the what's going on in their energy plant, and somehow they try to kidnap one of the kids. That's realistic. They try to meet up at a backcountry road to put them on the plane, like we saw with Black Widow, Marvel's Black Widow. That would have been realistic. But we have this giant Russian base under the mall, and then we go to this Russian prison camp. There's no point to it. There's absolutely no point to that at all. I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I agree with you. I think that's why a lot of people didn't like season three for like a lot of the
Yeah.
concerns you had.
Well, and granted, I'm now curious of like, did they do this angle as a completely different vector for how the show is going to go? And did Netflix tell them like, bro, we don't know what the fuck you're doing, but only 5 seasons, period. Like, who knows what conversations were behind the scenes? Because we go from Max Russian prison, Cold War era vibes to all of a sudden, hey, Surfer California, it's actually Vecna, and we're done. And we're over with. Let's move on with our lives. It was a very interesting shift that should not have happened, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's just a little bit of like, I think that's almost like the artist dilemma, right? It's like you come out with this vision and this idea of like how you want the story to go, and then like certain characters get popular, and I think that shifts like where the story is going to go. And I think we've seen this in a lot of series where you start in one direction, you have like this thing in mind, you're like, okay, this is the plot, this is like how I think we want to get there, and then one of these characters takes the front stage and is like, oh, that's really not where I thought it was going to go, but the fans like it. But if we want a couple more seasons, we kind of got to give the fans what they want, right? So then you adjust and you tweak, and I think it takes a little bit from the story. With that being said, I think we see that so much in at least in American like culture when it comes to like stories, I highlight like Wolverine, for example. I think Wolverine is like a character that's portrayed as this anti-hero, and I think because of like his popularity of like in the 90s, that led to a very complex dynamic with like some true X-Men fans, and then like the way the movies are portrayed, because there's lots of storylines that do not involve Wolverine being in front of the screen all the time. I think of Days of Future Past is one of those storylines where like Wolverine is not the character that we care about, right? It is not his abilities that go back here. He is not the one who's out saving the world. So, I mean, the X Men in general are like it's just like a feminine. Um, it's like it's really based on like the feminine nature of like a lot of the characters, um, and and I think a lot of like male fans really resonated with like Wolverine the same way they resonate with like Deadpool, and I think to continue that go forward, like you have to put that character face forward. But like but did you struggle with like really what who should be in charge? Storm doesn't necessarily resonate the same way that Wolverine does. You know, there's like, Shadowcat, or Dazzler, or Jubilee, or Jean Grey, or Emma Frost, right? So I think to kind of get back to this, I think this is again one of those situations where like those characters, Steve, like who probably shouldn't have been around as long, but also kind of went to being a support character, and Nancy, who ended up taking a bigger lead, maybe who was like something a little bit more support in nature, but because of like the Wheelers dynamic, because Mike and his dynamic of 11, like I think those things really impacted that. And I think because of like how outlandish things got and how some of the characters got too big for the team, you had to find these ways to frame that. And I think the Russian thing is a really great example of like how do we keep Hopper involved in this? How do we keep Joyce involved in this? What is the next step for 11 and her powers, right? Who's the big baddie that's going to keep moving forward? Because we can't keep on saying Vecna, we can't keep on saying like these creatures. We want to like keep this again like human. And I think in the very beginning, when the core was the boys, and it had that human nature of like us as humans as like being vulnerable, like dealing with the supernatural. I think when you like lean into the 11, you lean into 8, you lean into like the upside down, and then like that story, you gotta have it like bringing that back with like, all right, what is the human aspect of evil, and what is something the rest of our characters can connect with, and how do they progress in the storyline, and how do they evolve as the characters and develop as the characters that makes sense for them, now that we have this crazy supernatural thing happening on the other side. I don't agree that like the 80s like Russian trope of like us being under the mall in secret tunnels is the right way of doing it, but I think they had to find a way that was outlandish but also very 80s to try to like wrangle these characters back in and keep it relevant, because Hopper is not going to survive, season 3 without that Russian aspect of things, because the Russians were portrayed of having like technology and sciences above our capability, right? So like who else to keep them alive but also keep them hostage because they're working on something that's super secret? Not the Americans. They could have, right? But again, that would have like kept them within the small town, and again, I think we would have dived too deep into like 11 lore, and I think we would have lost those characters more.
Yeah, those are pretty solid points, man. Interesting. Okay, so gosh, what was the other? Oh, okay. My next big thing, my next thing that I really struggle with. This is what happens when you take 10 fucking years ish or whatever to do a whole series, and you have these kids grow up and have their own lives to where people are now getting married and in relationships. So now here we are with, oh my God, you know, Mike, I love you. Hug. Mike, I love you. Hug. Oh my God, we almost died. Hug. Final kiss scene. So terrible and unnatural. One of the worst kiss scenes ever, to where you could just see like Millie was like, I do not want to do this. I'm being forced against my will. No, I don't want to do this. So
Okay,
bad.
okay. So yes, I I think culturally everyone has looked at the way that Lucas and Max were holding each other versus the way that like 11 and Mike held each other. Um I do think that has a big part of it, right? I think it's weird because they're both professionals, and I think their spouses or significant others understand that like there's an element of this. But I think if you look at the characters themselves, 11 has never really developed past being like a small child. Like she has the superpowers, but her speech is a little weird and she's kind of emotionally stunted. I know like she's making out with like Mike in the beginning, but like that's like raw hormones, right? Still never past the awkward of like on the bed and the dry humping and the groping and the really awkwardness. Um, and they're also separated a lot in their story. So they have like this distant relationship, which never really matures into like emotional thing. And I think that also plays into like how they interact with each other because it is like it's being held together, but like there's that lack of connection. Like we met as kids, we had this moment, and we're developing as people, and we really want this to go forward, but it's not clicking. Like we're making this work, but I think everyone can see that this is not sustainable. And I think that could be a portrayal. I think that could be an interpretation of it. It's like, yeah, like their hug, but it was like they had like a young love. It's a fleeting love. It's an innocent love. It's a very immature thing that they were going through. And I think those last moments just kind of indicated that they never really had the opportunity to like dive into what would have been like progressing and learning and coping. Where I think where Lucas and Max, you don't get to see this on scene, but like they had to have normal interactions, doing dishes, doing chores, family dynamics where like
Mm,
theirs blossoms into like a relationship that is very flawed, right? But I think the flaws and the awkwardness of the relationship allows them to get closer and get more intimate and they hold each other, right? Because they have to learn to kind of endure those things where Mike and 11 never really get past the like, I love you, right? Like we were kids and like they like on paper it makes sense, but outside of like the weirdness of season 3, I dumped you. They never really have those small moments that make like for a really good relationship. So I
right.
think that's what we see in the awkwardness of it is that like yeah, like it's a very young innocent love. It's almost like he's like infatuated with her. And she's never really given the opportunity to kind of blossom into like a girl in a way that like Max gets to blossom into a girl. And I think that's a little bit of like Max's interaction with 11 of like,
Mm,
why don't you have girlfriends? You don't have a mom. You're not really getting like to have these conversations. And so like 11 isn't soft. Like
mm,
11's not going to melt into Mike's arms because 11 is stronger than Mike. 11 is a protector. And Mike is like I said, like I look at him as a DM and he's like he wants to control all of the narratives, he wants to tell the story, to push things
mm,
forward. He's got but like he's kind of struggling, like not able to control this aspect of a thing. And I think that's in like the weirdness of their interactions. Where Lucas
mm.
and
That's a
Max
good point.
are are like kind of fighting through some things and they're dealing with like the home dynamic and the personal lives and the struggle of like the upside down and so like Lucas is protective in nature and Max is not used to that. And I think you see that in the very beginning of their dynamic of like how resistant and how rebellious their interaction in a flirtatious way. But when you get to the tail end, he's become very protective of her and she's learned to allow that protection. And this is when you get to see her like melt into his arms. Um, and I think it's a really good comparison, but I don't know if we can blame it on like her professional, like her being a professional and having that relationship.
Those are some valid points. Those are a lot of valid points that I didn't really think about too. And it's interesting because yeah, like you have these two kids who say they love each other. Like we are in love. We love each other. But like Eleven's whole thing is to just fight this.
She
Right.
never has, and so yeah, like when you bring that up with her and Max, and like she's trying to figure this out, like yeah, it does make sense when you frame it that way for me, because yeah, there's never been any real romantic connection there. It's always been like, I want to go fight this thing, take it down, and then yeah, you've got Mike just trying to control every situation and scenario.
And I think you compare those female characters, right? Um, Max comes from a mixed household, then it becomes a single household, right? But Max has a maternal figure to kind of help lead that aspect. 11 doesn't have a maternal figure. She has a paternal figure who is protective, who is harsh, who is worried about those things. And I think that's where like the masculine versus feminine energy kind of comes into play. And she is a masculine character who so happens to be a girl. So like she's not going to have those same characteristics that Max has. Max is a female character who's developing into a feminine character, who's developing into a woman, where 11 is a weapon. She's a female, but like even in the portrayal of her, like she is, competing against boys. She's the one who has to fight against the boys. She is bald for like a lot of the story, right? She doesn't necessarily get to have those like girly moments because she is a weapon, and that's how they develop her. So it makes sense to
Mhm.
me that like when she has these moments where she's trying to connect with Mike, it doesn't quite click in the way that it does the other female characters because she's never been that. And so that makes it awkward. And I think that's that gap you see and when they hold each other
Mhm.
and that awkwardness and that hug, right? Because he's trying to hug her and like in a way that, he only knows and he's probably seen with like his mom and he's seen with like Nancy. And she doesn't bend in a way that allows him to be a guy. And I think that like that makes it really uncomfortable for him is he doesn't know how to help her because she doesn't necessarily need his help in the way that he can.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah. And see, this is why, like, I love you always bring fresh and different perspectives. And it's like, well, yeah, I didn't think about it from that standpoint. And, like, it's interesting, too, like, as we talk about 11, she is designed to be a weapon. She's designed to be a tool utilized by this entity. And as soon as you talked about that, I couldn't help but think about us from the military standpoint of like, no matter where I go now in life, I have the mentality that was, hammered into me, and I see things from a very different lens. And there's a lot of people around me who are like, "Oh, well, this," and I'm like, "Yeah, no, sorry. The mentality I have now is not changing. It's very much what I was trained to align with." And so
Right.
that makes sense from Eleven's perspective. This is what you are. No matter where you go or what you do, you will not get away from this from now on. You are this weapon.
So this is where I also struggle with Will's character, right? Because you have the female lead in 11, who's a very masculine female character, right? Who has the interests of Mike, who is a male character who is looking to progress, right? And like and so like you have Will, who is Mike's best friend, and Will is a feminine like a male character that has feminine traits. And so there's opportunity for like, or not opportunity, there's like moments where Mike is like, what are you doing? Because Will is looking for Mike to kind of have like that softer approach. And he's like, he treats him like a bro. And I think of like Will and his background is that he has a single mom. So like he has a maternal, he has like the protection and the love and in a different nature. And his brother ends up, identifying that he needs a different set of like not standards, but like a different layer of protection. So like Will becomes soft, not in a way that's like bad that he can't fight, but like he is a loving, soft, feminine character who, when he interacts with Mike, Mike is like, he wants to dap him up. He wants to treat him like a bro. And it's almost like Will wants to melt in his arms. Will wants to be like held in a way or talked to in a way because that's what he's used to. And I think that's what makes the three of them funny is because like he wants to do those things with 11. He does not want to do those things with Will. Will doesn't understand that like that's not going to go further, right? But I think that's also the poor development is that we could have had that conversation early on before we get to season 5 of like the fact that like Mike is in the middle of like one thing with this really masculine female character and a really feminine or a kind of a feminine male character, and then like how they like almost like what they want from him is almost swapped, or what he can contribute to them
Mhm.
are swapped, and he is too dense to like understand either one of those dynamics. um because although he's like the one who's kind of centered the whole thing, he's like telling a lot of stories and pushing things forward and like helping it, he just doesn't read between the lines very well. And
Which
I
is
think that's
also
why
my trait. I do not read between lines very well at all. I'm just like, bro, I need black and white, my dude. Like, just tell it straight up or don't tell it at all.
yeah, no, I love black and white, right?
Yeah.
um I think we talked about this before. Like, would you be lawfully good in the grand scheme of things? Like, you're talking about character development, it's like, especially like role playing. Like, sometimes I feel like you're either like lawfully neutral or like lawfully good, in like your perspective of a lot of things.
So in real life, I am lawfully good for the most part. In playing D&D, I am normally chaotic good, or at least what some people perceive as chaotic good or chaotic evil. And the reason I was labeled with that is because I was playing with a lot of people who wanted to just talk about what to do and not do anything. Like there was
Mhm.
one time where we talked, or the table talked, for over 20 minutes on what they should do. So I may have done something to move us along. And then on another occasion, we spent 40 minutes talking about we should try to cast a spell on this character who already told us he's willing to help us. And they're like, well, we should still cast a spell on him. He told us he's going to help us. Why are we taking 40 minutes to discuss casting a spell on him to get him to help us when he said he would just help us? I was so frustrated. I hated it. I hated playing with these people. So I would do certain things to force them to respond. And so they're like, you're chaotic evil. I'm like, no, you guys are just scared shitless. And you don't even, and I was a druid. So I was like, yo, if shit gets bad for us, I'm just changing into like an ant and I'm just going to crawl away from you guys and let you all suffer through this. I'm going to find a giant crack and I'm just going to go do my thing. So they labeled me as chaotic evil. But I was just like, you guys have not read a whole lot of lit RPGs. You guys just don't understand how RPGs work. Like we should be looting bodies. We should be looking for hidden things. We should be doing these things. And you guys don't want to do any of that.
Right.
They had a hard time with the fact that I was like, yo, what do we like? I was also a charlatan. So I was trying. So we had this one character. Oh God, who had a love interest with a barmaid, and they were like, oh yeah, like I totally want to go talk to that barmaid. Oh, I'm trying to impress this barmaid. Our party will put on a show for the town. I'm like, the fuck we won't. So they're putting us into this contract. And then of course they're like, oh yeah, and we'll just buy beer for the whole town to come watch this show. And I'm like, with what fucking money? We don't have any money. And you're just telling us, you're telling this person, we're going to put on a show to impress this barmaid and we're going to buy all the beer in the bar, in the tavern for all the people. So I'm like, okay, fuck. You just fucked us. And no one else has a problem with this. So then of course, me being the charlatan, I'm like, yo, yeah, let's make this a contract. Let's
Yeah.
make this a contract. And so they're like, my party is like, why are we doing a contract? I'm like, write the fucking contract. So they write the contract. They don't remember that I've got a forgery kit because of all the things I have. So I go away at night and I sneak into the tavern and I forge contracts saying that the tavern is going to cover the expenses. So I'm trying to do this to protect the party from getting fucked over based off of this person's sole selfish intent of fucking the tavern person. So I'm literally going around trying to fix all of this dilemma that they have caused for us, but they don't see it. So of course they're like, TJ's a chaotic evil person.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, I struggle with chaotic evil, right? Because I feel like, I'll be completely honest, right? I love like the lore of like, role playing. I mean, I grew up with like obviously like all RPG games are like my favorite. So, I love like Morrowind, Skyrim and stuff like that, but I don't think you really get to dive too much in like those characters. Fable. Now I'm super excited that Fable's coming back out. Whole different story. Um, but like when I think of chaotic evil, I think of characters like the Joker, who like really don't need any rationale. They just want to watch everything burn. Like it doesn't even have to make sense. Like they want to watch things fall apart for the sheer enjoyment of watching the pain and the raw emotion of like just being able to come in and create just disaster for everyone involved in it, whether it's physical or emotional. So when I struggle when I hear people talk about chaotic evil characters who have like a motive. I almost feel like chaotic evil is like evil in the purest form. It's like there's no motive. I just want to watch things burn. Um
Yep.
I think of chaotic neutral of like I would say chaotic neutral is like I like the sheer entertainment of things, right? Like I need to move this forward. I could care less if it's good or bad, but I just know I need to move this. And I would say for me and my lack of knowledge, and I acknowledge my lack of knowledge, everything you described to me just felt like very chaotic neutral because you're like, I'm working with the party, but like things aren't moving fast enough. I need things to move, and I'm gonna move them because I want to see this going. But I don't necessarily want to do it for the sake of chaos, but I also don't feel a need to like make you guys feel good about it. I just want to watch some things happen. Um, but
Well,
that's
that's
my
where what
interpret.
was funny was like there was one part where we were coming up and they're like, "Oh, there's the security checkpoint and they're looking for you guys." And I'm like, "All right, cool." And so everyone's freaking out like, "Well, what are we going to do?" I'm like, "It's called a distraction." So I lit an entire field on fire. And so the field is going in fire, there's trees ablaze, and I'm like, "Do the guards go and do something?" And they're like, "Oh my god, yeah, like they're responding to put the fire out." I'm like, "Cool. I got rid of the security checkpoint. Let's go." Like, how could you do that? It's a forest. I'm like, "You guys are really crushing my vibes right now."
Wait, are you a druid though? Are you a druid
I
that's
was a
letting the place
druid,
with
yeah.
up? I mean, like,
We don't need to love all of the forest, just a little part of it.
I mean, like, that, if you're a druid letting things on fire, that might be a little chaotic evil. That,
Just a little bit, but it was for the
that
good of the party.
that might be a little bit like now. If in a moment, I definitely give this a little bit of a sacrifice, and but like, come on, man, like,
Well, what
come
else was
on.
funny was I went. So again, we were stuck in the first dungeon that we were in, which is the dumbest thing ever. And we're going there, and I'm just like they're just doing their thing, and I'm like, I'm fucking sick of this. I'm going off on my own. So I go off, and they're like, "Ooh, you passed through like this little portal," and I'm like, "All right, cool. Where am I?" "You're in the other room, the other chamber." I'm like, "Cool. I'm gonna sit down." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna sit down and wait." Because my party is freaking out. They're like, "What did he do? Where did he go? Like, should we go with him?" I'm like, "I don't know. They'll fucking figure it out." So the one character has a familiar, which is a cat, and they send the cat in, and I'm looking down, and there's the cat looking at me, and I can hear the table. They're like, "I don't know. He's just sitting there. I don't know what he's doing." I grab the cat and I just chuck it into the chamber. And they're like, "You just killed this person's familiar." I'm like, "They'll get another one. It's totally fine."
Oh my
So there are
goodness.
definitely points where I had some chaotic evil tendencies. But again, it
Yeah.
was like, if you guys don't move along and do stuff together, I'm just going to go do my own thing. This is driving me fucking nuts.
Yeah, I can definitely see
The
where
DM has
like
already told us there's nothing else to find in the hallway that we're in. So therefore, we need to move out of the hallway. There's only one way we came into this dungeon. That means we have to go to this way. Oh,
all right, so I guess because it's like I'm looking at the clock, I see it's like reaching close to like 2 hours, um and I was thinking about like because we were talking about like season 5 of Stranger Things, and we were talking a little bit like the characters, the poor development, the lack of development, like some things you wish would have changed or some opportunities, and obviously we know Stranger Things is as a world um is going to continue, right? Because there's the Broadway play that like does a little bit of like the lore of things that happened before, the characters, the cast we know there's going to be a little bit of an animation series that's going to happen. I think it's going to take place between either seasons 2 or 3, or I think it's seasons 2 or 3. A little so, and I think there's actually another project that's going to dive a little bit into more of like what was actually in the box of Henry, and
Right.
how we kind of like learn a little like of like the upside down and a different world. So I definitely know we're getting the opportunity to kind of get a better idea of like how the world itself with these creatures and these characters are going to develop. I just think um with that all being said, that I don't know if it's ever going to be as good as what it could have been. I think
Oh yeah.
between like the writer's strike, I think between the weirdness of Netflix and how they greenlight shows, I think um, anything with kids, if you don't get the green light for like, with children like star actors, I think those things also start to impact the story. And I think, a great example of that is like Harry Potter, where we watch all those kids really age out of those characters, but they had a really aggressive schedule, and they still could not really beat that. And I think we probably will see something very similar with Percy Jackson and Disney and those characters that they develop, especially to try to stay true to those book series and try to hit those sub stories. I think we're probably going to see a lot of like 1 or 2 seasons of a story. And I don't think we're ever going to see necessarily like like an all cast like this as large as it was in this aspect, because I think it was just too many moving pieces that kind of took away from what the writers really wanted. Um,
I think the difference between Disney and Netflix, and I think you actually hit on a very important point. Netflix, I think, is very much like the traditional publishing industry, where it's like we're trying to look for the home run and we're going to maximize the home run, and then we get rid of it. And the reason I say that is like you have series like Marco Polo that was incredible, and it was so well done, following the story of Genghis Khan and everything. Incredible series, only 2 episodes. Netflix is like, cut it. We don't want to spend money on it. And so I think they just they put things out there without very little guidance, waiting to see what hits, and then it's like, okay, maximize on this, dude. This, go. And they're very much rushing, trying to hit the trend of whatever's popular. Whereas Disney is like, no, we're gonna take our time. We're gonna develop this story the way it needs to be, knowing that we're gonna put out a good product and people are gonna love it because it's a good product. And I think it's two completely opposite approaches.
Yeah, I definitely think Disney is really particular with their branding. And I think because Disney is such a big enterprise in general, between like their products, their marketing, their theme, parks, and like the fact that they own Marvel, they own just different other like intellectual properties, that they are able to be patient with those and let those stories develop. I still feel like Disney is the Walmart of storytelling. But I'm not going to go on that rant. I do agree with you that Disney is more patient in giving consumers what they want when it comes to the characters they love, and allowing those things to develop in a way that is fruitful. I think Netflix has struggled with that, and I think Netflix has killed off some really good ideas with a lack of patience. And I don't know a lot of the background of Arcane, but I think for me, Arcane is something that I would have loved watched develop with the particular characters they had. Because because I loved how it started off, and I love the characters. I love like the designs. I love the backstories. I loved how it all entertained together. Um, but it felt very it didn't it felt one of those it felt like one of those moments where the artists, the creators were not given the liberty to like tell a story and give the characters the opportunity to develop in the way that we would have appreciated to like bring me in. And I say this because I'm not a diehard fan in a lot of these things. I'm a fair weather fan in a lot of these stuff. Like I say with Stranger Things, like I didn't stay true to this for multiple years. I watched it all in December. And so I don't necessarily have as much emotional connection to a lot of people, but I still think from an outside point of view, I'm like, man, you definitely didn't give that character love. Like it felt cheap, or it felt like you don't understand the property that you're working with. Like you don't understand your audience. Like you're missing these things. And I think it's something as simple as like a kiss. Like a kiss in a story can be everything from a yearning for an innocence to like a deep romance to promiscuous to mischievous to death, right? And I think Netflix misses those nuances when they step in as business partners to kind of help push stories. I don't think Disney does that to kind of highlight what you say, like the difference between the two.
Hmm. Yeah. And again, it's a very different thing too, because like you said, I've probably watched Stranger Things at least 2 times, maybe each season throughout the years, boom, boom, boom. And I know there's a lot of other people who have probably rewatched it multiple times leading up to the seasons. And so they've spent probably a lot of time thinking about a lot of these characters and a lot of these dynamics. And that's a very different interpretation than someone who's just binged watched the whole series, but that's also where it gives a lot of different perspectives. Um, and so I know for time reasons, I won't go on to one of the other things, but I think what was funny is how what we talked about is Will is always trying to control everything. He is the storyteller.
Mike.
And I'm sorry. Thank you, Mike. Yep. Thank you for the correction. Mike is always trying to control everything, tell the story. He is the DM. I did love the ending. I loved everything that happened in the ending, how it ended. What I thought was, and I loved the transition from one family to the other, right? The generation of the generation. You see Holly and Derek and all them coming together. But as soon as you talked about, he's always trying to control shit, I was like, God damn it, Holly was the DM. The Wheelers cannot stop trying to control shit. Holly is gonna fuck up this party just like her older brother did.
Yeah, but I love the transition, and I don't think like I didn't necessarily like look into them the same way as I looked at like the boys, because like all of them came in with a level of trauma that the boys didn't have when they were like getting into that, right? So like Dungeons and Dragons was like a different level of escape than it was for the boys who like got into the game and then dealt with these whole things and had to like say goodbye to their childhood. As like for me, like Holly and those kids endure trauma and now we're trying to regain their childhood and trying to find escape in a different way. So that's how I looked at it. Um, but I love it's almost like but the cycle continues, right?
Yeah.
Like it's still going forward. Um, but I'm just gonna be honest, man. Of all the characters, Mike was my least favorite. Like of the main characters. Like I know I talked a lot of trash about eight, but I'm just gonna put it out there. Mike was not done any justice. I think Mike could have been a phenomenal character. I just think that like what we saw in the beginning and what we saw in the end is what Mike should have been, and we lost that in the middle.
I would agree with that.
So that's my take on
Yeah.
the whole thing. I know if I watch these episodes again, I would have a different interpretation of these things. I'm happy I was able to watch so many seasons consecutively and so many episodes close so I can see like the continuity issues and some characteristic changes and some dynamics between the characters and the actors. Like I think that's something I get to appreciate as someone who came in late to the game, who got to watch things really closely, I probably didn't have the same emotional attachment, and I didn't give the leniency to the characters and to the writers and to the creators the same way I think the true fans did. Because I think you yearn for things and you give people that leniency and you give them the opportunity to fix those things. I came objectively and hesitantly to the table to watch all these things. I appreciate doing it, and I appreciate you continuously like encouraging me to watch it because I know you love the show, and I appreciate the show. I liked the idea of the show. I love the fan base. I love the world. I can't say that I loved the execution,
Yep, I would
but I
agree
love
with
the
that.
ending. But I love the ending. I will say that. That is probably my favorite thing about the show is like how they gave all the characters the opportunity to say goodbye in a way that was very realistic, very 80s, and very true to I think how they intended in the very beginning.
Yep. And I love the fact like you have Steve and Nancy and them on the rooftop, and they kind of are like, "Yeah, man, we all went our separate ways, but there's never going to be anything like this." And I think that is so true of life, where not all of us make it to the end. Some of us get cut early in life, and some of us move on in life, and we grow apart. But those core moments that we share with people, and especially from an 80s culture, you and I are 80s and 90s babies. Like we grew up very similar to where that time frame of Stranger Things was,
Yeah.
and we know that the dopamine hits that we get from back in the day was when we were closely connected together, meeting at the parks, meeting at the ice skating rink or whatever. Like those moments of bonding together were where we got our dopamine hits. So to see that portrayed of like, man, I miss you guys, man, it sucks that we're all going our separate ways. I love that dynamic, and I thought that was really great. And it was very interesting how we got all closure sides, right? We got
Mhm.
Hopper and her. We've got the kids who are graduating and they played their final campaign mission and they went on, and then we had the older ones who had that closure. So yeah, if only they had put as much execution effort to the whole series and like at least season 4 and 5 the way they put to the ending, man, it could have been amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree with you.
Yeah.
No, I definitely appreciate you allowing I one, thank you for doing your homework. Uh, uh, I thought you were only gonna watch like 2 episodes, and I was like looking to do like I was prepared to like deep dive like 1 or 2 episodes. But I'm not gonna lie, I was like ready to like nerd out. I was like, all right, we're gonna talk about this and how this went forward and how this didn't make any sense. But I appreciate that you're able to watch like all of season 5 so we could just kind of like debrief that and what it lacked and what it did well. Um, I don't know. I don't think we'll see something that'll have the same cultural significance. Um, because
Mm,
I think what Stranger Things did well was make something that was very subculture and like Dungeons and Dragons and role playing games. Um, that had his resurgence that we hadn't seen in a long time. And you talk about the dopamine hits and the things of the kid. I remember being gifted a couple books as a kid, and my dad not knowing much about Dungeons and Dragons was like, it's the devil's game. And so we never really partake in that. And like but I also do remember being exposed to like Magic the Gathering and like Warhammer 40K. And then Elder Scrolls and like Morrowind. And so like I just remember like these things kind of leading into like how I look at media now and like the books and the movies and the stuff I really enjoy. And so I enjoyed Stranger Things for having that nostalgia of connecting a younger generation to something that an older generation loved, but also making something that was very subculture mainstream again, or making it mainstream at all because I don't think it ever was mainstream. Um, and I think it did a good job of that. I hope if they move forward, they stay true to themselves and they're developing their story. And I hope they don't necessarily allow mainstream culture to dictate like the story they tell, because I think that's really what makes these things unique, and I think that's what really keeps like the fans happy.
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as you try to appease a certain dynamic of an audience, you're going to lose the genuineness to it. And if you stick to what you intended when you first started, you're not going to like all the decisions, but that is their story to tell.
Yeah,
And yeah, that shift, that's where you lose a lot of it.
yeah. So, no, dude, this is great.
Anyways,
I really appreciate you letting me log on and ramble for 2 hours on.
heck yeah, dude. I was like, bro, I talk about like, oh yeah, man, I was talking to my best friend Efream. We were doing our weekend chat and everything else, and like no one knows who Efream is until now. It's like, yes, he's real, he exists. We've been talking for 2 hours, and this still seems like a very short conversation for us and what we're
I
used
know.
to.
It's like I felt really bad because I'm just like, when you first mentioned like logging on, to have this conversation on stream, and I was like, oh my goodness, do I need to like have talking points? I was like, maybe I should have like some cue cards so we don't get off topic too much. I'm like, no, no, we could just talk about the wall for 2 hours and have like all these talking points and all these guidelines and all these different conclusions and counterpoints. And I was like, no,
This
that'd be
is
fun.
literally us every weekend. So now we're
It
just
really
letting the
is.
world hang out if they want to. But yeah,
Yes.
every weekend this is our talks and how we talk and how it rambles on for hours.
Yes. And like tying in different stories, different lore, different backgrounds, different entities, like real world fantasy. Absolutely. That's like this is completely organic. It's just that the camera's on and I'm not eating food while I'm talking to him for the first time. Um
Speaking of which, what is this next series that we're going to work on now?
I don't know. I'll let you tell me what is the next thing I should dive in. Whatever it is, I'm gonna geek out. I'm gonna give you like my weird point of view on it. But I feel like you did a great job with like Stranger Things. I'll let you point me in the next direction.
Oh man, we're probably going to have to watch like some cooking show then. Oh yeah. Man, honestly, I wish we hadn't watched Umbrella Academy already because that would have been a great series.
I mean, I don't know, man. Like a revisiting of Umbrella Academy now, especially like now that it's like been removed a little bit of like what happened with like the actors, what happened with like some of the characters, like the political chargedness of like the one character versus the comic and like how that's going on and how it ended. I think it wouldn't be a bad thing. I just think it would have to be a comparative of like what happened in written versus what happened in live production, and then like a conversation of that because I think um again, this is something that I think was fairly underground with a subculture that went mainstream. And I think because of the mainstream popularity, it completely changed what the story could have been. I'm actually shocked that Netflix kept it for that long. So there might be something we could dive into.
I mean, we could do that. We could do Wednesday. I think I've only watched like half an episode of one on Wednesday, so I haven't watched that series.
Yeah, we can do Wednesday.
I
We can
don't
figure it
know.
out.
I'll let you know.
All right, man.
All right. Well, hey, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with us. This is my best friend, Efream. We talk every weekend. This is the first time he's ever been on the live stream, and we want to talk about Stranger Things because obviously he always gives me awesome perspectives, things I haven't thought about, and we're very passionate about nerding out on all things. So, yeah. I don't know, dude. I don't know when we'll have you on again, but we'll have to do this again for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I have no problem nerding out with my camera on. I'll charge my phone this time. Actually, next time I'll prepare and just be in my office. Uh, I'll use a yeah, I'll use a computer instead of my cell phone. That way, people aren't suffering through the shaky cam.
That's awesome. And as my good buddy Nick says, nerds rule. Heck yeah, man. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. You guys have a great weekend. We'll talk to you later.
always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Keep my head up when I act, head up, that's a fact. Never looking back, I'ma keep myself on track. Keep my head up, staying strong, always moving on. Feel I don't belong, tell my thoughts to move along. Push myself to be the best, die with no regrets. Live with every breath, see my message start to spread. And I had so many dreams, then you hit your teens. Life ain't really what it seems, try to find out what it means. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. I'm grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win. I don't want no fake love, I want the real stuff. Everybody listen up, cause I'll only say it once. I'm gonna show you all the path, if you want it bad. I'm gonna show you where it's at, yeah, how you can get it back. Yeah, cause I ain't never done, I'll be number one. Working hella hard until I get just what I want, yeah. Rises like the sun, yeah, fatal like a gun. Shooter's gonna shoot and I'm gonna shoot until I fall, yeah. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. I'm grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win, yeah.